Absolutely phenomenal. Good morning, guys. This is your breakfast with the brand. I am your host, Shaan. And listen, sometimes I get excited, right? Sometimes even I am excitable, right? And sometimes even I get excited. This is one of those moments. This is one of those mornings. If you're here, credit to you. Like, way to leverage leadership, guys. If you're here right now on a Saturday morning at 8 a.m. or whatever time zone you're in, you are in the right place at the right time with the right mindset. Again, guys, this is the breakfast with the brand. I am your host, Shaan Rais, as always, flanked by the phenomenal Bobby Jackson. We also have Junior Frederick joining us, and we have a living leadership legend with us as well today. So I'm always talking about changing the face of leadership. And you know how they say, give them their flowers now? And in certain cultures, this bad habit is pervasive. There is a bad habit that is pervasive as far as, or when it comes to congratulating our heroes after they're gone. This is something that needs to seriously stop. Congratulating our heroes, celebrating their accomplishments, having recreation around their results after they physically retire, right? We have this terrible habit. I don't know where we got it, but it needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. There's certain faces that need to be phased out. There's certain situations and stages and replays that need to be phased out, and this is one of them. So when you do something disruptive, when you do something innovative, when you introduce something new to any market, you want to stop something that is no longer working, and you want to introduce something that is going to become known as the new norm. The new norm. So one of the new norms that I want to introduce is celebrating people in the present. Our legends do not have to be long gone or passed on to be celebrated, recognized for the responsibility and the service that they've provided. Keyword being service. Today, again, this is the breakfast with the brand. And if you can't tell, I'm a little bit excited. How are you guys doing?
Well, Sean, as usual, I am super excited and very, very honored to be honest. Man, I almost said who the guest was. I almost said who the guest was, but okay. So, guys, I'm not gonna say who the guest is just yet. But I am very honored and very excited to have him with us. But guys, you're in for a good treat. I myself, I feel phenomenal. I'm ready to go, and I feel like this is gonna be one of those episodes where it's no telling where it goes, and it just ends up being something magical. So I'm super elated to be here, and I'm ready to go.
Very good, Bobby Jackson. What's the energy like? What's the energy in the room?
Can't
You're
hear
on
you,
mute.
Bobby.
You're on mute.
See, energy that high. The energy is that high. So I am super excited, very excited about the conversation that we're going to have and where it goes. I know this guest as well, and I believe that there's certain gems that just uncover themselves. And I feel like it's going to be one of those days where we're going to hear something where we're going to be like, wow. We're going to see something, we're going to be like, whoa. And those are very interesting conversations. And I think that's exactly what we're about to have this morning.
Very good. Very good. The topic is going to be leadership, as always, right? Leadership, branding, executive coaching, a different level of leadership. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So, let's just start off real quick before we bring the guest out. I want you to think about the level of leadership, the game that you're playing at. What is the level of leadership? Because there are levels. I like to tell people that there's a leadership ladder. You start by leading yourself. You get to the second rung by leading others, right? And as you become a better leader, your leadership transcends you, and then people are given to you. Souls. Hear me clearly. Souls, lives are put in your hands to do what with that you will. or what with that you literally will into existence. Now, when I tell you putting souls into your hands, it makes me think of the guest that we're going to bring out, because he's actually a pilot as well. And what many people might not know is the topic or the language. Every level of leadership comes with its own language. And one of the languages in the pilot level of leadership is how many souls are on board. So you'll think that you're a passenger, right? You'll be like, I'm in first class, or I'm in business class and I'm a passenger. And how many passengers are there? And that's our level of leadership. As a passenger, the person sitting next to you is a passenger. But from the level of leadership of the pilot, every passenger is a soul. And they ask, with a different level of leadership, different level of understanding, they ask, how many souls do we have on board? Think about that responsibility. It's not how many passengers are we going to get there. You know, I drive, I don't fly yet. I drive. So I'll say, you know, is everybody locked in? Is everybody's seat buckled? That's one level of leadership. But this guy, this guy transcends a completely different level of leadership. People report to him and he says, how many souls are on board? We're about to have some fun, man. We're about to have some real fun. I mean, when I met this gentleman, it was by chance. It wasn't pre-planned. God just works in mysterious ways. And I think that he uses people as chess people. He uses people as chess. Like he plays chess with people. So he puts people in rooms and he configures strategies and aligns people with people so that people can help more people and succeed in ways they never thought possible. So this is a client inside of the Leadership Leverage, and we are just so elated and so proud and so happy to have him that we had to do this fast and make this take place. I cannot begin to illustrate or enumerate the multiple different accommodations and certifications and qualifications of this gentleman. So I'm not even going to do it a discredit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a break. And when we come back out, I'm going to let him illustrate his illustrious 30 plus years in service to this country and everybody listening to this call. When I say share this out, it comes in the form of a question or an ask with the question mark, but it's more of a directive. And it's more of a directive today than it has been at any time before, because we need to celebrate our leadership legends while they are living. This is not about Sean Rais. This is not about Junior Frederick. This is not about Bobby Jackson. And it's not even about you. Share this out so that somebody else can hear this wisdom and tag someone who needs to tag someone who needs to tag someone. This is the Breakfast with the Brand, and we will be right back with our illustrious guest, Joel D. Smith. Let's grow. There's slow growth, and then there's scale. There's incremental growth, and then there's exponential growth. What I want to talk to you about is adding a zero to you and experiencing exponential scale. Incremental growth says 1 + 1 is 2. Exponential growth says 1 + 0 is 10. Incremental growth says 2 + 2 is 4. Exponential growth says 5 + 0 is 50. Guys, listen, when you add a zero to you, you can add a zero to the marketplace. You can add a zero to the value that you bring. So you can add a zero to your family, add a zero to your legacy. This is what we're talking about. We're not talking about incremental. We're talking about exponential. I always say that business is a spiritual game. Just imagine when you combine your skills, your values, your abilities, your talents to something bigger than you, something greater than you, something like the power of exponential. That is adding a zero. Add a zero to your competence. Add a zero to your confidence. This is about adding a zero in your life, your value, your industry, and your mission. Let's grow. the reason why I did this and what I do is help leaders to become brands and brand themselves. You train people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. I teach authenticity marketing. If people can take advantage of you, they will in your personal or professional existence.
My biggest takeaway just from day one is you are the brand. I would recommend it to anybody that's really looking to build a personal brand.
Just the brand in general has changed my life. I've grown so much since I've been a part of this.
I see myself in what he does, and I believe in it just as much as I believe in myself.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome to the Breakfast with the Brand. Of course, I am your host, Shaan East, flanked by the phenomenal Bobby Jackson with Junior Frederick joining us and our illustrious guest this morning, Joel D. Smith. Brother, first, I just want to say welcome to the Breakfast with the Brand, and then thank you for your service. Thank you for your illustrious service to this country, to the people on this call, to the people watching, to your family, the people under your service and under your leadership and your guidance, and all of the souls that you have guided from where they were to where they found themselves safely.
Absolutely. Thank you, and sensational Saturday morning to each of you gentlemen and to everyone that is currently on the podcast and viewing from the different platforms. It is such an honor to be before each of you this morning. I mean, I am so excited. I don't know what to do. You know, I haven't been this excited since the first time I strapped on into a gunship and went downrange and fired off some rounds and just felt the recoil as the aircraft was moving backwards as I was shooting the gun. I mean, this is just so super exciting. And as we talk about leadership, you know, my whole vision is just simple: change how leaders think. You know, it is imperative as a leader that you obtain a level of adaptation, the ability to adjust to a changing environment, an ever-changing environment. It's just so critical in today's world. You know, we've gone through COVID, we've gone through wars, we've gone through many different forms of pandemics, but to become effective leaders, we have to be adaptable.
Very good. Very good. Great introduction, you know, and I know I've been speaking for a moment. I kind of got tripped up while I was introducing you because I don't know where to begin, right? I don't really know where to begin. So I'm going to save my question for last, but I want to give Bobby Jackson, I want to give Junior Frederick, I want to give them an opportunity to state their understanding of and then ask a question based on a reality that you've been living for longer than a lot of people watching have probably been alive. So, Bobby, let's start with you. What would you like to ask Joel, and what is your positioning on, you know, just leadership when seen from this height?
Yes, I will say that I have flown on some C-130s rolling down the strip, so to speak. And a C-130 is it's a huge aircraft that's designed to transport military service members. And there's something interesting about leadership and about these planes and about just the level of leadership on them is because I was in logistics, so we would see guys loading these planes. Joel probably saw something like that. And we would also see people strapping these things down with chains. And then we would also see Marines and soldiers and Army people on the sides of the plane, all strapped in. And then you have this pilot. And what's so interesting about this is they're not just transporting, so to speak, people, but they're transporting the ammunition, the people, the cargo. It's strapped in, it's locked in, and if anything on the plane doesn't get where it's supposed to go, then the fight or what's happening on the ground might not work out the way it's supposed to. So it's a level of pressure, I think, that a pilot has that a lot of people don't really understand, especially a military pilot. So my question is, how did you handle the pressure of not just making sure the souls arrived on time, but also that the resources arrived and the people arrived and it got there in a timely manner, and you did what you had to do to protect everybody that was in that aircraft?
Good question there. I'm going to answer it twofold. The first thing is going to be trust. It's more than just the pilots flying the aircraft from point A to point B. There's a whole lot that takes place prior to us ever starting an engine, taxiing out to the runway, taking off, climbing up, descending, landing, taxiing back in. There's a lot of networking on the ground that takes place. There's a lot of pre-planning that takes place. It's your comfortability in knowing that everybody is capable in doing their specific jobs. That means weather forecasters giving us the information that we need for the flight. The ground folks, we've ensured that we have the proper amount of fuel on board. The load masters, since you mentioned the C-130s, the same with the C-5s and 141s and all the other aircraft that the Air Force use, they're ensuring that the load is equally distributed across the plane to make sure that the plane stays within CG, center of gravity. They also make sure that the plane is properly strapped down, that all the equipment is secured. So when we take off and when we hit the thrusters to go forward, naturally, what do you do in your seat when you're sitting on a plane? You lean back. Well, when you have hundreds of thousands of pounds of equipment on board, you don't want it to go flying to the back of the aircraft. You want it to stay in place so the airplane maintains its CG. So the first thing that we must have all across the board, whether you're a pilot, a ground technician, a fueler, and all the above, is the trust in everybody to do their specific job according to standards. The second part of that is, for me, would be the stewardship of the profession. As a professional pilot, I am careful and responsible in my management because I'm entrusted with, one, a multi-million-dollar aircraft, two, precious lives, three, precious cargo that is needed wherever it may be. And this is applicable whether you're looking at it from the military standpoint or for a civilian standpoint. Stewardship remains the same. It's the careful, responsible management of something that has been entrusted to somebody. In the military, we take it a little bit farther because we're saying those same things, but it's entrusted to get you to mission accomplishment. So the end state for us is mission accomplishment because, simply put, lives are at stake when you talk about a military mission. In business, it's taking care of lives. It's taking care of your employees. It's taking care of your staff. It's taking care of all those individuals. Same thing with the military, but you're in a much different environment. It's a more dynamic environment. And Bobby, being a former Marine and a special operator that you are, you know that things change at the drop of a dime. The enemy has a vote. Ooh. When we look at this, we think about it as weather. That could be an enemy. It has a vote. Mishaps. Screw might come loose, a bolt, a zip tie might come off, hydraulic system might decide it doesn't want to cooperate, might develop a leak. Things happen. When those things happen, because you have trained religiously, I will say, you've done it over and over again, and we all know that repetition aids learning. The more you've done it, the more it's a natural reaction. So when things happen under the stewardship of the profession, we just naturally react calmly, go through the checklist, figure out what the problem is, address the problem, and make a determination whether we're going to continue the mission or divert or go around, having those contingencies.
Wow. Thank you.
Ooh, I got a lot to say about that, but I want to let Junior speak. I got a lot to say about that. Go ahead, Junior. I'm going to digress.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Joel. Number one, let me just say thank you for being here. I'm not American, but let me tell you something, guys. After speaking with Joel, I feel like almost like a patriot, man. I know Joel and I we've worked one on one, for a little while now. So absolutely, being able to hear a little bit about his experience, has certainly shaped my perspective. I really love what Joel just said. The enemy has a vote.
Ooh,
I actually wrote that down. The enemy has a vote.
me
And I
too.
might put that up. I might put that up on my wall, Sean, because that is so powerful. Very recently, I've been exploring the idea of enemies in business. Okay, so there's a book called Choose Your Enemies Wisely, right? So I've been exploring the concept of enemies in business. And what I've seen is that many high performers, they all have enemies. Now, enemy in this context is not necessarily a person. An enemy could be a situation. I remember a couple years ago, Sean, when we started, COVID was the enemy.
Yes, that's right.
Remember that? COVID
Yeah.
was the enemy. So, the whole concept of using the enemy to fuel your passion, your determination, your motivation is a concept that I'm exploring right now. My first question to Joel, I have a two-part question, right? My first question to Joel is, how do you as a leader use enemies to motivate and drive your team? And then number two, since you mentioned, some of the dynamic things that can happen while you're on a mission, how do you prepare and plan, or how do you make up for the unexpected? I'm a very calculated kind of person, okay? And I know you cannot calculate life. Like there's no way you can just calculate life. So things will always happen that you may not have seen, that you may not expect. But it sounds like in the process of planning, like you're going through so much, like what you just spoke to Bobby about, like making sure that the center of gravity is right and the people are right. And it sounds like you're putting a lot of energy into the planning process. But even with all that energy that you put in, things can still go wrong. So my question to you is, the second question is, if you put so much energy into the planning process, how do you now deal with the unexpected?
All right. The first question that you asked was reference to, with the enemy out there, how do you motivate and drive?
Yes, sir.
Let me digress a little bit. I'm gonna go back to where I came from and who I am. I grew up outside of a military base here in the middle of Tennessee, Montgomery County, small town now is a larger city, Clarksville, Tennessee, in a small neighborhood called Birchwood Estates, right across the street from Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Mm.
As I grew up, Birchwood Estates was the first and probably the only neighborhood where African Americans could own homes. There was nowhere else in the city that you could. So the first thing that you look at when I think of the question that you just asked, the enemy, well, what is the enemy? Who is the enemy? And what can the enemy do to me? Can they deny me education? Can they deny me the ability to progress? Can they end my life? When we're looking at it from a military standpoint, everything that we do is about one, deterring. The United States military doesn't want to just simply go out worldwide and engage in war. We absolutely do not. But please understand, we're not going to shy away from it if the nation calls. And if the nation calls, our mandate is to go and not only win, but win decisively.
That's right.
So when we look at how I motivated and drove my folks and those that were associated with me, the leaders above me, those that were beneath me, my whole thing was there's a standard. In aviation, we have what we call an aircrew training manual. In that manual, all the maneuvers that we did, all the things that we did had a standard task condition standard. Well, one of our standards was if we went somewhere on let's say a deep mission, 2-3 hours flight inbound to a target environment. No matter how many checkpoints or where you were going, the ATM standard was plus or minus 1 minute. You would meet your checkpoints, you would meet your crossing points, and that could mean you're crossing friendly lines, crossing enemy lines. There's a whole lot of coordination, won't get into that. But Joel Smith's standard was plus or minus 3 seconds. We're going to be on time every time and deliver ordnance where it needs to be, 1 shot, 1 kill, as it were for the snipers.
Right.
We want to get it down there. Because if we're late, it impacts people's lives on the ground. If we're early, it impacts people's lives on the ground. So my whole thing about being motivated in driving guys was driving them to perfection. Now, understand, you'd ask, going into your second question, how do you prepare for contingencies or problems arising? There is no perfect plan. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a perfect plan. Because as I stated earlier, the enemy definitely has the vote. That enemy is not just the adversaries. That's the weather, that's maintenance, that's supply lines, that's all those things have a vote in overall success. Where we tended to excel is we allow our troops, our sailors, our Marines, our airmen, our Coast Guard to think. We allow them to think. We embolden and we empower the NCO Corps, our non-commissioned officers corps. You know, I'm sure you've heard Bobby say on many times that I'm going to do my job so that officers like myself don't have to do my job. Again, we have all of these books and all these indications and tells us how to do it, all the above, but you have to keep in mind, those things are guidelines. It's your ability to think and adapt that is going to allow you to succeed. Do you always get it right? Absolutely not. Let's be realistic. In combat, in war, in business, sometimes you absolutely get it wrong. The question you have to ask yourself is, I got it wrong. Do I stop or do I strap up, ruck up, and roll out? Do I keep pushing? Okay, this was a mistake. We learned from that mistake. We adapted to that mistake. Now we move forward. I hope that answered your question, Junior.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And I wrote down set new standards.
Yes.
So just to clarify before I pass to Shaan, so you were saying that there was a standard of 60 seconds,
Yes.
and then yours was
3 seconds.
Was it 3 seconds?
3 seconds. So no matter how far we were going or whatever we were doing, if you were crossing what we call the friendly line of troops, in order to go into enemy territory, you're crossing friendly lines. There's a line that separates you. It's an imaginary line. There's a line drawn on a map somewhere. We're crossing that friendly line of troops. Well, typically there's some things that's taking place in the airspace, on the ground, to open up that window for us to cross safely and get into enemy territory. If you're off by more than a minute, that airspace clearance that you had may change. There may be something else taking place in that moment, which could dramatically change the outcome of the mission. Same thing with the airlines. We're flying, and I'll use London, for instance. London, the many times I've flown across the Atlantic, transatlantic, does not want us landing before 7:30 a.m. So as you're going across the Atlantic, you actually have the ability to judge your time and adjust your airspeed and fuel flow to ensure that you arrive at a time that you're not having to go into a holding pattern and doing a bunch of circling, waiting on that time for you to go in and land. So it's about fuel economy. It's about knowing your aircraft. It's about knowing what the environment is doing. In the Northern Hemisphere, traveling west to east, typically you get a tailwind. Sometimes those winds up at the upper altitudes can be 100 plus miles an hour. Obviously, that's going to increase your airspeed and increase your ground speed heading that direction. Well, you have to make the adjustments to ensure that you arrive on time. Being able to adapt, being able to adjust, being a steward of your profession, understanding that this is what I'm required to do to be in compliance, to ensure the passengers are comfortable, to ensure there's no delays, to ensure that we're not going to do all these things circling. I've got to communicate with the flight attendants in the back because they're back there taking care of the passengers. And we don't want to have to do a whole bunch of explanations as to why we're up here just doing circles in the air.
Mm.
Now, if there's an emergency, obviously that's going to happen, and we'll communicate that. The captain or the first officer with his direction will communicate that to the passengers. We'll communicate it to the flight attendants first and then to the passengers. But you want everything to be as smooth as possible, understanding that things happen and you have to be able to adjust to it. That comes with training. Repetition.
Yes. Repetition and training. So, guys, listen. First off, Joe, you speak like a seasoned professional when it comes to speaking. Let me just say that. Like, I know you haven't been on the Breakfast with the Brand before, but you're knocking it out of the park times 10, 1,000%. So, congratulations there. And I wrote down a lot, and I hope everybody else is. If you're enjoying this episode, put a comment in the chat, like comment on this. Let Joe know how good he's doing, because, like I said, the goal with the Breakfast with the Brand and the Branded Like a Leader economy and the leadership leverage is to change the face of leadership. And with bringing Joel out here, this is an accomplishment. This is what we're doing, and this is what I meant when I said it. So this is an evolution of the brand to consistently bring before you people religiously who embody a different spirit of leadership and a different face of leadership, different level of leadership, different level of thinking. And when we come back, we're going to get into a specific form of thinking and a specific way of thinking espoused by Mr. Joel D. Smith. However, before we go to break, I heard a couple of things. I wrote down the enemy has a vote as well, Junior. I had to. Like, I wrote that down and underlined it. And I also wrote down not only win, but win decisively. So you've heard me say dominate multiple times. Don't compete. Dominate. Differentiate yourself so you're not in a space of competition. I don't believe in competition. I believe in elimination of competition. So I love the one shot, one kill analogy. I've used it many times with Bobby Jackson. I also heard standard. I heard ATM standard. What does ATM standard mean?
Air Crew Training Manual is what ATM stands for. And
Okay.
it's the standard. So in everything that you do, let's say I'm flying a traffic pattern. Just staying at the airport, you're doing a traffic. You have the takeoff, you're going upwind, turn crosswind, you come back downwind where the airport is parallel to your position, you turn your base, and you turn your final. Well, each of those areas of operation, each of those legs, there's a standard. So the ATM gives you a standard. So one of the standards, especially on the downwind or when you're flying, is you need to maintain your altitude plus or minus 100 feet, maintain your airspeed plus or minus 10 knots, and maintain your heading plus or minus 10 degrees. Well, that's a lot of wiggle room. You're staying near to the airport, so it's not a big deal. But if you're doing that on a cross-country flight that, let's say, again, transatlantic, we have routes that are actually in the aircraft and that are known routes to all the airlines going back and forth. Same with the Pacific. You're on this route and you are 10 degrees off of the heading or 10 degrees off of where you're supposed to be going. Well, after about 100 miles, how far are you off the route? You're well off the route. So if you're not maintaining your discipline, your airspeed, your altitude, air traffic control is going to start trying to talk to you. Hey, what are you doing? You're not on the route. hey, what are you doing? You're not at your altitude. Why? Because the airlines, they'll typically try to maintain 1,000, 2,000 foot separation between aircrafts as they're going. And when you're flying and you've sat in the back of the plane and you've looked out your window and all above and you've seen a plane come by and it seems like that plane is awfully close, or you're at night and all you see is lights, you have to keep in mind, there is at least 1,000 foot separation between you. So they're providing you those clearance, and we have things in the flight deck that allow you to see where the aircraft is. We'll cross directly over each other. We'll pass. We'll do all those kinds of things. But you'll see the plus or minus 10 or 900 feet, all the above. When the aircrafts get within a certain distance of one another, you have something that will start talking to you, saying, aircraft, okay, climb, descend, whatever the case may be, and you need to react because somebody is not where they're supposed to be. So the standards are different tasks that you are required to do. You have a task, you get the conditions on a straight level flight, doing a turn, doing a descent, and then you have what the standards are to meet.
Very good.
In order to progress.
Whew. So I'm getting a lot in the comments in the chat about the application to business of your insights and experiences, and we're gonna get into that when we come back. We're already at the 8:44 moment, so I'm so excited. But at the same time, guys, just so you're aware, like these are the kind of conversations, stimulating, thought-provoking, multi-applicable perspectives that are shared within the Leadership Leverage. These are the kinds of conversations that take place, again, strategic insights that take place and occur consistently and consecutively within the Leadership Leverage executive coaching community, of which we're lucky to have such an example of leadership as a part of our conglomerate and collective. One thing that you mentioned before we go to the break is train religiously. I always say that business is a spiritual game. And it's because of the different variables. And it's because of the different forms that the enemy can take in business. Debt, competitors, unpredictability within the market situations. Everything changes all of the time. The revenue sometimes is it's unpredictable when you have such volatile situations taking place all around you in business. And we serve inside the Leadership Leverage CEOs, business owners, key executives, and emerging leaders, those entrepreneurs, those transitioning professionals who are moving from one space to another. So I just want to illustrate one such transition that you've gone through, because I know people heard about your military background and then they heard about your piloting background, but I want to make it clear something so that everybody here has a clear definition in their mind when it comes to these thoughts. You're not only a pilot in the military, you've also become a commercial pilot as well. So you've flown in both arenas, so to say. So I want to ask you that before we go to a break. How have you had to adapt your thinking from a military pilot to a commercial pilot, and what was that transition like?
Transitioning from military to the civilian side of things, I had to slow things down. In the military, though I flew both helicopters and airplanes, drones as well, when you're flying a helicopter, you don't want to get too elaborate. You're basically flying an aerodynamic brick. Helicopters don't glide. When the fan up top stops turning, you get that real quiet sinking feeling. It's pretty much a done deal. And with helicopters, because you're not up at 30, 33, 35, 39,000 feet, you're right here close to the ground. If something happens, the emergency is not now, it's right now. And how you respond to that emergency could be the difference between you living, saving an aircraft and your crew members, or perishing. It happens just that quick. A lot of what I did, especially when we were flying night missions, and yes, I flew Apaches primarily towards the end of my career, attack helicopters, and we fly infrared, and that infrared was typically right over my right eye. My left eye saw lights and darkness. This eye saw infrared, and a bunch of information was pumped to this eye. So if something happened, not only was it happening in one eye in the dark, it was happening typically anywhere from 5 to 100 feet off the ground, which meant if it happened, you'd better react, and you better react properly, or it could be catastrophic. That's where that training came in. That's where that repetition came in.
That's right.
That's where we had the benefits of sitting in a simulator and flying it over and over again and practicing emergencies. Unlike when I switched over to the civilian side, where the emergency checklist was basically a one sheet that were something that was critical. And though you memorized certain things before you did anything, you still pulled out the checklist and you did it verbatim. On the military side, I had to know the checklist verbatim as far as the emergency procedures. So in our -10, which was the Bible for your different aircraft and your different pieces of equipment, we had chapter 5, which was your operating limitations, and you had chapter 9, which was your emergency procedures. You knew those 2 chapters verbatim, without exception, verbatim, because those 2 chapters played a significant role on whether you were going to survive. And if you did the wrong procedure, yes, it could end catastrophically and could cost you your life. And that has happened, where somebody responded the wrong way, pulled an engine off that they should have probably just kept on to get to the ground first. And of course, the aircraft crashed.
Yes, sir.
So repetition, and then being confident in knowing that you're doing the right thing.
Wow.
So when I switched over, like I said, to the airline business and to the civilian stuff, I would listen and I would hear certain things where folks would get a little bit upset or get a little bit antsy, and I'm just looking around like, dude, we got time. We're up here at 38,000 feet.
That's right.
Because even if both engines stop and we just glide and just come down calmly, we got at least 30 minutes.
Wow.
Yes, but at the same time, I'm not making light of it and saying that it's not urgent.
That's right.
What I'm saying is you have time to think, assess, and react appropriately. Whereas when you're down close to the ground and you're flying and you're in the dark and you have trees and you have wires and you have birds and whatnot that may be flying around all the above, and you have somebody trying to stick a missile into your aircraft, telephone pole size missile and all this other stuff, your reaction time is not now, like I said earlier, it's right now.
Guys, right now we got to go to a break. This is the Breakfast with the Brand. If you're getting some insights, put it in the chat. I know you're getting a ton of insights, as are we. And we're almost on an hour. I can't believe it's been so fast. We've come so far, so fast, guys. Put the comments in the chat. Let us know, right? If you want to see Joel D. Smith next week, if you want us to do a continuation of this next week so we can like flesh out this elaborate leadership conversation, because this is a leadership, branding, and business conversation. I know it's kind of hard for you to take it from 39,000 feet and bring it down to your business. And how does this apply in your business and in your leadership? But this is exactly what we're talking about. Nothing less and nothing more. We'll be right back. This is the Breakfast with the Brand with Joel D. Smith. It's very important that you know yourself to the highest degree possible, because it's through knowing ourselves that we're able to know other people. You are the most important person in the room, and the better that you know yourself, the better that you're able to communicate to others. So you're not only playing the game knowing who you are, but you're also playing the game knowing who everyone else is, so that you're not playing blind.
He's extremely engaging with people. He has a fantastic smile, and he's just very high energy person.
This is called leadership development. So we have to be independently knowledgeable and considerate to know who we are, so we can more effectively know who other people are. As the leader, it's your responsibility to allocate resources in the right places. If you don't know how to communicate effectively, you're losing the battle. I said Shaan Rais. I'm proud. I said Shaan Rais. Leadership is not the brand they made for us.
Listen, he brought fire, heat. He didn't hold back.
20 years down the line, what I could sell, why not serve first? Service over salary. Branding like a leader closes the gap for people who want branding. Speaking like a leader closes the gap for people who are nervous about speaking. If Steve Jobs would have speculated, we wouldn't have Apple.
He changed lives. He helped people open up their business and start their business.
We are the brand. Some people say, Shaan, should I quit my job? Mentally, yes.
As a speaker too, to be able to learn from him and watch him and you know, game respects game. And I want to have that much game someday.
The right client, pay $500,000 for what you do. You have to be bold in your beliefs.
He has been an amazing asset to this event and a pleasure to work with. Very captivating, collaborative, worked very well with the audience.
I want to help you. Put a 0 behind your number, right?
The session was great. How he is online, virtually, he is even more phenomenal in person.
Be the face of change that you want to see. Stop asking questions and start giving demands.
The entire team has just been absolutely incredible. They are a joy to work with. They go above and beyond.
Give yourself a round of applause. Yes, yes, yes. We have enjoyed a powerhouse of a conversation this morning. Absolutely powerhouse of a conversation this morning. I am really taken aback, and I think a lot of the watchers are as well. You know, the comments are flowing in from LinkedIn, Facebook. They're commenting on Instagram. We have multiple places on Facebook, YouTube. Guys, if you're watching in right now, like, congratulations to you for being attentive to your own business, your own development, your own leadership this morning, because we have the phenomenal guest with us, a living leadership legend who we are appreciating for his service, for his accommodations and commendations in service to this day. Now, Joel, you're transitioning again into service to business leaders, CEOs, people who need to think strategically, people who need to think decisively. And they might not have the 30,000 or 39,000 feet or half hour of float time, right? They might not have 3 months of float time. So I want to ask you, and I'm going to put something in the chat for people who want to get in contact with you now, because this has been a powerhouse of a conversation, guys. If you want to have a conversation with Joel directly to talk about where you are in your business, where you're trying to go in your business, how you can make the most of the reserves that you have in your engine, how to set the GPS and get there, how to get from ground zero to where you're trying to go with the people that you have on board, like your team members. How can you escort them or get them there in the safest manner possible? There's a way that you've had to think, Joel, to do all of the things that you've done in your very illustrious career. And I think we're going to have you back next week to go deeper into it, because it's just so heavy that we can't do it in 1 hour's time. And I don't want to discredit the weight and the value. So I think we're going to do this again next week. but I do want to ask you about the importance of strategic thinking and how it applies to business, how it has applied to your leadership, how it's applied to your years in the service as a pilot. One of the things that we do here is evidence-based, right? Everything we do is evidence-based. And it's one thing that I really, really pride myself on, not having attempters or posers or pontificators or maybes. Like, this goes way beyond motivation. Like this right here, this conversation is not, you might be motivated, but this is not motivation. This is evidence-based. Motivation might get you in the air, but evidence-based strategic thinking is going to keep you there and get you back on the ground safely. So I want you to talk a little bit, Joel, about the definitive thinking and the need for strategic thinking as our CEOs, business leaders, emerging leaders, and business owners are trying to succeed and weather the enemy and weather the terrain and the different variables that continue to show up in business. What is the importance of strategic thinking, and how can you help them think better?
Okay. I'm going to try to adjust this. I know we're a little bit short on time, and we'll go into next week as well, but I'm going to start it off number one with, in order to be an effective leader and to develop to the strategic leadership level, one must first be a willing follower.
Yes.
What am I saying? We've all said this before. Success in becoming a leader, when you're becoming a leader, is about training and bettering you. Once you become a leader, success is about training and bettering others. So before we get in there, you have to be a willing follower. All of us were born, but we didn't immediately become leaders. It's just like being in nature. You're in the wolf pack, which was also one of my favorite call signs when I was in the 82nd Wolf Pack. But if you know anything about wolves, you're born, you don't immediately become the leader. And that's with any pack animal, whether you're a male lion or all the above, you're learning to follow first.
Yes.
During your fellowship, you develop into a leader. Where I find a lot of leaders drop off when they transition, and we'll speak at the smaller companies, tactical levels in the military, to the battalion, brigade, more senior levels, where you get to a civilian company that has 3 or 4 outlets or stores that it has, to where you're getting to the strategic or the enterprise level, and you have the CEOs of Fortune 500 all the above. Where leaders fall off is their inability to adjust to each specific level. In essence, each time you go up a level, you've got to follow somebody, whether you're looking at another brand and how they're doing things, whether you're going back and getting additional education to help assist, whether you're looking for a coach.
That's right.
Following and leading is one of those life reoccurring events. It's an ever-evolving circle. At some point in time, each of us, no matter whether you're the CEO of your company or not, you're still needing to go back and follow. You're still needing to go back and learn. You're still needing to go back and adjust. So when I think of strategic leadership, I just put it in 4 words real quick: aligning, vision, enabling, and environment. You're aligning people, systems, and resources. Your vision is what is going to, it's got to be clear. It's got to be concise. It's something that you can articulate to your people, and then it's going to help you move forward with one common goal, one common purpose. Enabling is allowing those folks beneath you to do their job and giving them the full confidence and knowing that you're going to support them. Doesn't mean that you're going to crucify them on the spot if they happen to make a mistake, because mistakes do happen. But can those mistakes be corrected? Did they learn for those mistakes, or are they just making repeated mistakes? So you definitely have to look at that. And then you have to look at your environment. The environment for the military was simple in a lot of cases. We're going up against an enemy. It's a dynamic environment. It's fluid. The battlefield is changing. Pieces and parts are moving. Equipment is being destroyed. People are losing their lives. You continue on. We want to mitigate the loss of friendly lives.
Whew.
In the environment in business, are you adjusting? What happened during the pandemic? A lot of folks went to what we're looking at now, which is called future work, where everybody wants to work at home. Nobody wants to come back into the office.
That's right.
Well, how did certain organizations adapt to it versus some organizations that didn't adapt to it? Where are they now? Some grew, some fell off, some managed to sustain. It's all about being able to strategically think. It's leading an organization to reach those goals by getting everyone on the same page. That's what strategic leadership means to me. That's why I'm so emphatic on wanting leaders to change how they think. You know, you have this grand idea at the headquarters, but in that grand idea at the headquarters, did you talk with the guys down in the trench to ensure it was something that they truly could implement? Did you give them the resources, the funds, the training to implement it? Are you training your staff? I've heard you say it on many occasions as a strategic leader and as a CEO. I'm working to train somebody to replace me so I can have time.
That's right.
I'm working to get my time back for my family, for my grands, for my kids, for my charity work that I wish to do. I'm working to get my time back. If you're having to do it all as the CEO, are you an owner or are you an operator?
Powerful.
My thoughts on strategic leadership: trust, communication, self-team development, ethical leadership.
Wow. Thank you so much. This is so powerful, guys. You know, we got so much from this, and I don't even want to say anymore, really, because I just want you to think about what's been here. Like, watch this again and again and again. You guys are looking at and listening to a living leadership legend who is battle tested, right? Like, this is not a movie. Like, this is not a movie. This is not a stand-in. These people, though, the person that you're listening to right now, these people have movies made about them and about their successes and about their wars and the battles that they fought after they're gone. We're changing that, though, because we need to recognize our heroes now in the person, in the flesh, in the form. And we have the opportunity to do that. So I put a number in the chat. I put a link in the chat. Please don't use the link if you're not serious. Like, don't, as soon as I put the link there, I kind of wanted to pull it back. I'll be honest. I put the link there and I kind of wanted to pull it back because, like, a pilot's time, you got to understand the value of a pilot's time. Just think about that. You don't get to speak to the pilot. If the pilot comes out and says a couple words to you, you're lucky. You're lucky because it shows his character. But you don't get talk time with the pilot. You get talk time with the stewardess. You don't get talk time with the pilot. So I just want you to understand the value of what you're getting today. The pilot is giving you instructions on how you can fly the plane successfully, battle tested and proven. I'm going to let Bobby and Junior speak a little bit, and we're going to be back next week to kind of round this out. Although I want you to understand this, like, this conversation never ends. Never. You always have to think strategically, and the battle environment is always changing. The business environment is always changing. So you always have to adapt. You always have to grow. You always have to learn. You always have to lead, and you always have to follow. These are non-negotiables. These are just non-negotiables. These are leadership standards. I digress. Junior, Bobby.
I can go ahead and give my 2 cents wouldn't even do that, what I was about to say justice. I just not even give my 2 cents. It's like I'm just about to say a piece of what I took because I have no time to go through it all. But I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me is in relationship to a book that I'm reading right now called Relentless. And in the book, it talks about you don't have to like what you do if you love the results. And leadership is one of those things, I think. And that was a subtle nuance that I heard Joel say, but I don't know how many of you all heard it. So he was talking about repetition. He was talking about how many times you do something. He was talking about being in a simulator. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to speak on Joel's behalf really quickly. I don't think he liked being in that simulator over and over and over again. I don't think that chair was the most comfortable chair in the world. I don't think he enjoyed pulling the plane up, letting it get back down, and doing it over and over and over and over and over again. But the result of saved lives, getting to his destination within or passing through the window in a 3-second time frame instead of a 60-second time frame, those results were worth the mundane minutia of things that he just did not care for. And that just made me think about, and I'm about to pass it to you, Junior, here in the Marine Corps. I remember being on the rifle range, and I just absolutely hated it. I did not enjoy being on the rifle range. It's hot. It's uncomfortable. You're loading rifles oftentimes in the cold, like a magazine, like your hands hurt. It's just a miserable experience. And you do it over and over and over again. And there's this thing called tap, rack, bang. So in the Marines, we are the riflemen, and every Marine is a rifleman. So we know how to clear a weapon system instantly, and we do it without thinking. And when Joel said you've only got, X amount of seconds, you got now and right now, that took me back to tap, rack, bang. Like if the enemy is aggressing me and my weapon jams, I've got a right now issue. Tap, rack, bang, and I can do it in my sleep. And that's something that I received.
Yes.
Tap, rack, bang. Let's go. Junior, what you got?
And listen, I have like 3 pages of notes, guys. I have like 3 pages of notes. But very quickly, what I wrote down, like I don't even I literally don't know where to start. Like I wrote down speed. I wish I could get into speed. Maybe we'll get into speed on the next one. I wrote down be a willing follower before you become a leader. So that was very important to me. I wrote down some of Joel's principles, but I also wrote down, Shaan. I think one of the number one things I took from today's conversation, and I wrote it down like this. I said, when your back is against the wall, you fall to your worst level of skill. So when your back is against the wall, you fall to your worst level of skill.
Very good.
So when we listen to, especially people like Bobby, I remember Bobby, talking about the training in the woods and in the trees, and we listen to Joel and the simulation and all that stuff he had to go through. Guys, you fall to your worst level of skill when your back is against the wall. So when somebody pushes you, how you react is your level of skill, is your level of mastery. So what that tells me is that, like, and this is for all of us, I think I speak for all of us when I say, like, we need to assess, like, what is our worst level of skill? Whether it's branding, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, whether it's speaking, what is your worst level of skill? And how can you, just like Joel was saying, implement new standards to raise your level of skill so you can perform, phenomenally on the good days, but you could perform great on the bad days. So that's what I'm thinking about, Shaan. Like, it's easy to perform great, right, Joel? When the weather's nice, it's easy to fly, right? But I'm imagining you flying through a thunderstorm. Guys, you will fall to your worst level of skill on the bad days. So what standards are you implementing in your life, in your training, in your study? So Shaan, there are people that study and they don't write anything. I had to tell somebody the other day, what's written will be retained. What's written will be retained. So if you're studying and you're not writing stuff down, if you're working out with no program, if you're going to class with no notebook, you will fall to your worst level of skill. How can you implement new standards in your life, in every single area in your life, whether it's time management, whether it's training, speaking, closing, sales, branding, whatever it is, to ensure that on your worst level of skill, you can be competent when somebody pushes you, or when an enemy has a vote and the enemy decides to push you, and when the unexpected things come. Are you prepared? Is your worst level of skill enough to face an enemy when you come across those worst situations? And that for me would be like the number one thing I've taken away. Shaan, I'm definitely going to implement this absolutely immediately after this call. Immediately after this call, I'm going to implement this, go through this myself, go through it again, and then see how I can implement this in my life. But thank you so much, Joel. I'm looking forward to next week. I guarantee you that, man. Listen, guys, share this out. Make sure you show up next week and bring some friends. If you enjoyed today's conversation, then next week's conversation is going to be even more amazing. I guarantee you that.
All right. So I said I wouldn't say anymore, but I can't help myself. I promise you, I said I wouldn't say anymore, but I absolutely cannot help myself. I'm literally blown away and so humbled by the magnitude of this conversation. Your vision will determine your mission. And I had a vision a long time ago, brother. I mean, a long time ago, to create a platform where we could elevate and demonstrate our mastery and level of leadership for the world to see. And this is a fruition of that vision that I had so long ago. And I just want to thank you for your presence and for your ability to trust in us to provide you with a platform so that you can express yourself in such a level of brilliance and bravery and magnitude of business and service and military. Like your accolades are that they far surpass. But one thing that I took away, one of my main takeaways from this, because I'm learning, guys, I'm writing as Joel is speaking, I'm writing. I'm a student. I've been a student for the past 30 years, if I'm honest. I've been a student forever, and you are a student forever, and your business will reflect that, and your leadership will reflect that. But the main takeaways, if I had to boil it down to 4 words, would be competence, conversations, confidence, and community. Competence, conversations, confidence, and community, because, and this is the reason why, your competence will rise to the level of the conversations that you're a part of. You've learned something today, whether you know it or not. You've learned something. You've been exposed to so much high-level conversation right now that your competence is increased, whether you know it or not. You've been elevated just by being in the presence of. That's number 1. Number 2, your confidence grows based on the community you're a part of. Imagine having these conversations repetitively and being strengthened and being edified by being around people who think at another level, that have different levels of experiences that can take you beyond where you've ever thought possible and stretch your imagination and stretch your thinking. Imagine being in the room with the likes of a pilot who's battle tested 30 plus years. Guys, if you're serious, check out that link next to Joel D. Smith's name. Book a call with them. Do it sooner than later. Don't wait, because you need strategic thinking. I need strategic thinking. I've thought strategically for a long time, and this is one of the results of that strategic thinking. And then I also put a link in there for the leadership leverage, because that's the community that espouses these kinds of conversations consistently to edify your confidence and your competence. Joel, you can close us out with a couple of words of wisdom if you don't mind. And we're definitely going to be more than elated to have you back next week. Done a phenomenal job. And thank you so much again for your service.
Well, thank you once again, gentlemen, for having me on. It has truly been a pleasure. It's been a blast. I've enjoyed myself. I'm just, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. I don't want to say too much, because next week I want to kind of delve into the complexities and adaptive capacity, and understanding that there are no winners in a strategic competition. We're going to talk about leaders, laggers, and losers. There's only 3 outcomes. No, leave it at that.
Guys, tag somebody who needs to be tagged. Wake somebody up who needs to be woke up. Make sure you're here next week, same time, same place. This is The Breakfast with the Brand, with our phenomenal, unforgettable guest, Joel D. Smith. Let's grow.